Hello and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about pop culture and the world around it. I'm Nick.
And I'm Alistair.
And this week we will be looking at the finale of The Bear, the high-stress cooking show that has got extremely good reviews from us over the years, but can they nail this final service? And then we'll be heading out to the country for the movie Sheep Detectives, in which we see what happens to sheep before they get served up in The Bear. Before all of that, Alistair, what else have you consumed in the last fortnight?
Well, I'm here to recommend an album, which we do every so often. So this is the new album from The Pretty Reckless, who's a band that I like a lot and I've seen live, and they do an amazing live show. This is their new album, which is called Dear God, where we find them in a slightly more thoughtful and reflective frame, maybe reflecting on the dark times we're living through, as I feel we said about a few musicians that we've discussed. The Pretty Reckless are a really good group. They're sort of a bit punk, a bit metal, a bit goth, sort of mixed up together. The band's led by Taylor Mossman, who might be most famous as playing Jenny Humphrey in Gossip Girl before she became a full-time musician. But the band has a cult following and quite a lot of success. They opened for AC/DC on the last tour, and I saw them on the UK tour a few years ago. They do an amazing show. It's very much in that vein of Americana sort of rock and roll, with metal influences, punk and things like that flown in, and occasionally a bit of sort of country and western vibes. I think it's all this sort of blitzed up milkshake of American kind of rock and roll. And a lot of their songs are like a lot of punch. They're really fast, quite heavy, a lot of really good riffs. But what's interesting with this one is it's a bit more reflective. Quite a few songs on how there's sort of like dark days ahead, a few sort of slower, more folky ones, or country and western ones, but it's still really fun to listen to, so I can certainly recommend this if you've enjoyed previous Pretty Reckless albums.
I have not listened to previous Pretty Reckless albums, so this isn't at the heavier end of your music taste then? This isn't any of your really loud post-punk?
No, it's not at the heavier end. There's some of them are pretty fast and pretty intense, but it's definitely not as heavy as even something like Sprints, who I think was one of the last bands that I recommended on here. We're definitely more into sort of like punk metal territory than Last Dinner Party or BC Camplight, which we've also discussed on this podcast. But if you really think of that sort of like Americana rock and roll with a bit of like goth and metal, you're kind of 90% of the way there. In fact, their previous album, which I kind of preferred to this one a bit, was called Death by Rock and Roll, and that was very classic like Americana rock and roll album about sex, drugs and fast living and good music and riding Harley Davidsons and things like that. It's very American, which may be why with the turn that America's taken in the last few years, we find them at a sort of more reflective, introspective, and kind of talking about dark days ahead in this album.
Okay, so we've gone from fast living on our motorcycles to can't get fuel from a motorcycle because of the Iran war.
That'd be the modern protest song, the modern country and western protest song. So I'm not going to attempt to spitball what that would actually sound like. So actually,
no, I'm not going to try and spontaneously sing a country song for a number of reasons. But obviously we have reached a point where the second Trump presidency has been going long enough that we are getting the culture about it in large quantities. I mean, even from not American bands. I mean, just because I enjoy mentioning them, the last Los Campesinos album was very, we are living in dark times. I'm sure other bands are as well, if I could just remember. I mean, Sleaford Mods obviously are basically always singing about how we're living in dark times. Dark, kind of squalid and shitty times.
I think with Sleaford Mods, it's like their music's very much focused on like downtrodden working class people, things like that. And I guess things have been pretty shit for them for a while. Especially since the first album was literally called Austerity Dogs, about the Cameron years and austerity. But I feel that with the second Trump presidency, it's gone from like, oh, things are bad for poor people or people of colour, to basically like things are just bad generally,
I mean, we've talked about this before in the context of other bits of culture. Things have, for some people at least, seem to have shifted from things are a bit bad for some groups to, oh, are we sliding into the apocalypse?
I
mean, obviously we've talked about, some of the media we've consumed in the last year or so, which has touched on, full-blown nuclear war, to use the obvious point.
Things like the Power Fantasy or World Tree just swings to mind as something about like the whole world's going mad and turning really violent.
That movie with Idris Elba that I forgot the name of, that book I read,
and what's interesting is that as well as we're getting like specific culture about like the rise of authoritarianism or, bringing in specific aspects of like Trump and things like that, they'll also get, I guess, like culture that's about kind of the general vibe being dark and depressing and the sort of general like cultural, political, social outlook. Because I guess they're Pretty Reckless. They're not especially a political band. I mean, it's interesting when I saw them live, they did do a cover of Neil Young's Rockin' the Free World.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, it's a protest song, and I feel that was very much them nailing their political colours to the mast. And there are some songs that you could interpret as political. There's a lot of, especially in the previous albums, of songs that are like stand up, fight back sort of vibe, but it's not really explicitly about one thing or a specific issue or something like that. And there's always been, even during good times and stuff, there's always been people just doing songs with the general vibe of kind of like stand up, fight back sort of thing. But there's definitely a sense of like, more than specifically talking about just like a specific issue or even just like fascism in general, this general sense coming through a lot of culture of like, we're living through dark times. There's just a sort of dark spiritual, political, cultural kind of force out there, or sort of unpleasantness going on, which is sort of being explored or sort of warned about through culture. So in a slightly more abstract way than something that's directly political.
Yeah, so the Pretty Reckless aren't singing about specific government policies, they're just generally singing about a sense of doom.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it, yeah.
Obviously Muse have been singing about, the vague sense of oppression and how we must fight back against those that oppress us, whoever the fuck they are, for about 20 years at this point.
Yeah, it always was a bit vague. But then again, when I was at university, Muse were kind of at the height of their popularity. I suppose it was relatively more prosperous, peaceful and stable times. I mean, there were lots of problems and stuff, and I suppose there were, even the signs of where we were heading, even like Tony Blair with his 90-day detention policies for people who committed terrorism and the sort of beginning of like the surveillance state. I suppose, there were like things at the time, but I guess they seemed a bit non-specific when it was Muse in the mid-aughts or whatever. Whereas like now, if they say like stand up, fight back, it's usually quite clear who they mean, And like I say, seeing them live with a band with a lot of southern influences and a lot of country and western influences. Obviously, they're entertainment industry liberal types, I'm sure, at heart, or I don't really know what their politics are, but I felt there was, by doing a cover of Neil Young's Rockin' the Free World, that in a sense is like the political statement in itself, even if the rest of the music isn't.
Yeah, and speaking of Muse, the new album's actually good, which is shocking after some quite bad ones. But they have managed to release their first decent Muse album in 10 years. If anyone else is a teenage Muse fan who keeps half an eye on what they're doing but has somewhat got used to them releasing terrible albums, the new one's okay. The new one's actually worth a listen if you enjoy a good Muse album.
I don't think I've listened to a Muse album since Sing for Absolution. But I've heard they've been on a bit of a rocky road for a while.
The one after that is the one that had Knights of Sidonia on it. That's pretty good.
I know that song, yeah.
After that, they do go into a bit of a decline. I'd say since the Knights of Sidonia album, Black Holes and Revelations, I'd say there's only one album apart from the new one, but I would say is really worth listening to, and that was Drones, which was the mid-2010s. Aside from that, it's been a long slog of bad music.
Oh, yeah, I remember people saying Drones was good at the time, though I didn't listen to it. I'm glad they're back. They're getting on to being a legacy act now and things like that. I went to a post-punk gig thing, in a pub, student bands or whatever, and one of them did 2 Muse covers alongside covers of like Rage Against the Machine and things like that. It was a lot of, I hate to say, like basically classic rock. I mean, the kind of the length of time between certainly against the first Rage Against the Machine album and now is probably greater the length of time than between when I was at university and the music from the 60s and 70s that my dad really likes. So when I go to a student band when I was at uni and they would do a cover of T-Rex, Rolling Stones, Status Quo, The Doors, any of that sort of stuff, it's probably about the same length of time, and it's because it feels old when it's your dad's music.
Well, obviously the millennials now have kids, so I guess our music is indeed dad music. Oh well. Yeah,
exactly, yeah. If you were slightly older than us, you could have had a kid around the time that Sing for Absolution came out, and that kid is probably old enough to be genuinely in a band. And then not be like a sort of a cute novelty
coming up on stage at the punk night and going, and this is a song I remember being played when I was in my crib as a baby.
I'm too old.
My time is running out.
Like, oh god, I'm old. This shouldn't be allowed.
I'm old, and that baby had weirdly good perception.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh dear, yeah. No, in terms of like contemporary music, I do listen to contemporary music. I'm not too old. I'm like, no, please, they do.
Well, one of the reasons we make this podcast, yes, a desperate plea for our own relevance. We still listen to contemporary culture, we swear.
Yeah, I'm not old, don't take me to Carousel. Yeah, this is a good album. I especially liked from the track list Dragonfire and About You. There's some sort of classic, pretty reckless rock in there, especially About You. And I did enjoy some of the more thoughtful kind of slower and like acoustic ones. I mean, it's one of the things that say it's kind of nice when like the bands vary their sound up a bit and do slightly different things in that, like rather than just like releasing the same album over and over again. I mean, they could have done a paler imitation of Death by Rock and Roll, and it would have just been like, yeah, more songs about just fast living and rock and roll and things like that. Yeah, and each album does have its own distinct sort of sound within the Pretty Reckless oeuvre. Like the first one, its name escapes me right now, is like much more, I think it's Light 'Em Up, I want to say, or was that the song? Anyway, never mind. That's much more like metal and gothy and stuff, and there's like more songs about like murder and things like that, and being a vampire and things. The second one's got like, yeah, some bit more like slower and like slightly more experimental stuff. Death by Rock and Roll's like hard rockin' album, and this one's a bit more introspective, so it's nice they're not just doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, no, I believe we've reviewed many an album either on this podcast or just down the pub for just being the same album again, so I'm glad they've managed to escape that trap.
Anyway, I've been fishing for relevance by listening to contemporary music. Nick, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
I have been reading a comic from about 6 years ago, so medium relevance. This is Stray Dogs, a mini-series that came out, I think, around the pandemic by Tony Fleeks, Trish Forstner and Tone Rodriguez. It is a horror Disney movie, I think is the best easy description of it. It's about a bunch of dogs that have been locked in a house by a mysterious man and taken away from their owners, and it's fairly obvious from the beginning that, you know, their owners have been murdered and they've been kidnapped by this man. But how long will it take these dogs, many of whom are not very bright, to realise it before they too are killed for misbehaving? It's a sort of Disney horror vibe. The artist, Trish Forstner, there are two artists. I think Toad Rodriguez does the backgrounds and Trish Forstner does the sort of characters, and I think she's a former animator, so she's definitely got the Disney vibe. That's definitely what we're after here, this sort of horror-tinged Disney movie, which is the sort of thing that sounds interesting as a high concept, but can sometimes get a bit boring to actually read, because it's a bit too knowing and self-aware. But this was actually a bit of a genuine word-of-mouth hit when it came out. This was very popular, and you can see why. It really buys into it quite hard. It doesn't waste any time sort of winking at the camera and going, look at what we're doing. It's very visceral. It's very invested in the sort of moment-to-moment horror of these poor dogs as they try and work out what's going on with their tiny brains, and then work out if there's anything they can actually do about it. It's very cute, it's very likeable, and it does actually have a bit of edge to it, a bit of brutality. Dogs do die in this comic. If you're one of these people who has a full-on does the dog die test for your media, probably don't read this.
Sounds good. I think there's something really interesting about the vibe of like Disney and horror, in the sense of like a lot of Disney stuff is quite cutesy, and then like you're kind of subverting that with horror creates this sort of interesting juxtaposition. It's
an interesting juxtaposition, although it's also the sort of thing that can stray into sort of slightly tiresome edgelordism, I guess, you know. On the one hand, you could do an interesting contrast. On the other hand, you could just go, oh, what if Winnie the Pooh was killing people? To use a completely random example. And that ends up not being that interesting, because once you've seen Winnie the Pooh kill someone, that's basically the end of the
joke,
the appeal, and there's no actual story attached.
Yeah.
Stray Dogs is actually a fully thought through narrative, and as I say, it's quite in the moment, it's quite invested, it's very concerned with getting you to actually buy into its new characters and actually care about their little journey. And it does have its sort of take on exactly, you know, what it's like to be a dog and how dogs perceive humans and the world around them and stuff. And it's really good. As I say, 25 issues, doesn't really outstay its welcome. It's just one little book. They did do a sort of sequel one-shot or two-shot, I think, where they did some sort of background stories filling out the world. They were fine. But to be honest, the main Stray Dogs book is the main one you need to read. That's good.
Yeah, so it's sort of 5 issues, graphic novel length sort of thing.
Yeah, just one collection, yeah.
Lovely, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, and then the same team, after the success of this, because again, this was an actual, like, genuine viral hit, this did do incredibly well. They came back and they did a new series called Feral, which is a sort of ongoing series that they're still doing now. And this time they've gone from dogs to cats. And it's a sort of somewhat post-apocalyptic horror where all the animals seem to have been infected by some sort of advanced form of rabies that basically turns them into, like, vicious, red-eyed zombies. And this group of, like, domestic cats are just trying to survive in this world where every other animal is, like, rabid, bright red eyes trying to kill them. And all the humans are terrified to go anywhere near any animal because they're scared of getting scratched and getting this disease. Yeah, it's more sort of horror with a vaguely Disney aesthetic, but it's slightly more brutal, slightly more visceral. It's rather than Stray Dogs, which is very contained to this one house. In Feral, they're like travelling across this whole world, meeting like different outposts and different groups of like animal survivors. It's a bit like The Walking Dead in some ways.
I suppose if it's a longer story, there's sort of scope for more locations, characters and situations.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite Walking Dead, yeah. Now I go down that road, yeah. Like I say, you meet different groups of survivors, you have your sort of core group, but sometimes people die, sometimes new people join. Again, they are very willing to get particularly brutal with it. If anything, the longer they seem to go with this, because they're up to about issue 25 of Feral now, the more brutal they seem to become, the more horrible things have actually happened. Like, every so often I do turn a page and think, oh wow, they went there, huh? That's, oh god. Which is impressive work after all this time. Maybe it just sneaks up on you more because they've got this incredibly cute, incredibly well-executed Disney aesthetic. But yeah, it really does punch you in the guts a bit more than some human-based horror I've read, which we can discuss what that says about my sense of empathy later. But yeah.
Well, maybe it's also because it's animals and stuff. And I do think a lot of the time people feel sympathy for animals, maybe more than people and things like that. It's, you know, sometimes what brings a tragedy home is seeing an image of like an animal that's been lost in like a natural disaster or a war and something like that. I mean, yeah, I guess we're, you know, hardwired to care for things and that seem helpless and stuff, like animals, especially animals in distress. And I don't know if it's also a specifically British thing that we consider ourselves to be a nation of animal lovers, and you know, we feel quite strongly about how animals are treated and stuff, so that I think bleeds through into our culture a lot.
I mean I guess this isn't a British comic, because I think all the creators are American. I think I've heard at least 2 of the 3 on podcasts, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's become a bit of a general internet signifier, hasn't it? If there's one thing the internet can sometimes unite on, even as we argue about basically everything else, it's, you know, oh, isn't that cat or dog cute?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so on an even broader scale, this is the one thing we can all get together on, agreeing that it's sad when animals get randomly torn apart by other zombie animals.
Yeah. Or in this case, like serial killer.
Or in the case of Stray Dogs, a serial killer, yeah.
It does sound interesting to say that they've worked out these dogs as characters and made them convincingly like dogs, you know, like in the way that dogs think or act. That seems like quite an interesting way to tell a story and quite challenging.
Yeah, as I say, they've had some interesting thoughts about exactly how it would work. I mean, we'll get to something similar with sheep detectives later, I guess, and their thoughts on sheep culture. But unlike in some Disney and adjacent talking animal stories, the animals can't all talk to each other. The dogs can't understand the cats can't understand the dogs, which does make sense as they're obviously not talking the same language.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of these obvious but interesting changes you can make.
Yeah, it does sound good. Yeah, good recommendation, and I do enjoy my horror, so yeah, sounds like it's quite scary on that front.
Yeah, it's definitely genuinely horrific. Don't be too fooled by the incredibly nice, cute Disneyfied art. It's quite bleak at times. But yeah, Stray Dogs and Feral, both extremely good current comics. Well, Feral's current anyway. Feral's up to issue 25, and they have said they want to keep going as long as they can to like 50 or 60 or something, so, you know, support your local horror comic.
Next up, this episode, we will be discussing the 5th and final season of The Bear. At the end of season 4, Kame announced he was leaving The Bear to find himself, and Sydney would be taking over. At the same time, the clock has run out on The Bear's money. This season picks up pretty much immediately where that left off. We have seen this final season on Disney+. Nick, what did you think of it?
I enjoyed this because at this point I have a lot of investment in these characters, and as long as it's, you know, filmed and acted with their usual style, I'm happy to watch them doing pretty much anything. And yep, this was another good run. It's a strange one in some ways. I really got into it because I am very invested. I felt like there was both a good renewed amount of drama in the actual plot. You know, for the first time in a while, I did actually feel there was, you know, a real sense of tension in how their service was going to go, but also almost no drama with regard to the characters. Like in the final season of a lot of shows, you're sitting there going, oh my god, is everyone going to be okay? And like, this might just be me, but I did not feel at any point that there was much risk of any of the characters not being okay. I thought they might throw in one token tragedy or token bad thing happening to show that, you know, they're not completely soft. But spoilers, I guess, they didn't even do that. It's a nice sort of coda. In some ways, it felt like a lot of the big resolutions for the characters kind of happened last season. And this is just, you know, tying it all up with a neat little bow. But if you like The Bear, then it is a nice atmospheric finale which gives all your favourite characters a good send-off.
Yeah, I got the sense that it was close to resolution, almost at resolution at the end of season 4. And yeah, so this was only like a bit more story. It worked quite well. It almost felt like this was like a special movie they'd done just to kind of wrap things up, partly because unlike previous seasons that take place over like a long period of time, almost every episode from this season is like one day. I think it's basically 7 episodes take place in one day, and then the 8th one is, the finale is like a few days later. So it's got this real sense of like pacing and kind of driving through from like one event to the next as everything kind of follows from one to the other. And yeah, it does feel like the sense of almost you watching the Bear movie, in the sense of like this is just all like one extended event. It was a bold decision to do that, just to like, yeah, we're just going to focus on really one event. But I think it worked well because there was a sense of like characters being wrapped up and the narrative, a lot of it being wrapped up. So to like do a whole season like the previous one with lots of different locations and events and characters, new characters as well, then it would feel, yeah, I don't know, like padding it out and things like that. Whereas this more felt that like appropriate, the sort of amount of drama and pacing felt appropriate to the point the story was left at the end of season 4. So I really liked it on that front, and that it kind of neatly and wrapped everything up.
Yeah, and I liked that it sort of recentered it around the restaurants a bit after seasons 2, 3 and 4 to varying levels, moved it away from that at times and became a bit more of a sort of collection of stories circling around the restaurants with lots of sort of breakout stories about what the characters do in their free time and stuff. But this was very much, in some ways, a callback to the early seasons where it was very much about them having an intense time at the restaurants. And yeah, no, I enjoyed that as a send-off. I thought it was nice to get back to doing that. Was it a bit self-indulgent and saccharine at times? Maybe, but after 3 years of investment, I more or less bought into it. And to be honest, also, they're very much prepared you for that tone over the course of the last few years. You know, if you don't like slightly self-indulgent and occasionally saccharine, then how are you still watching this show?
Yeah, exactly. And because this is their finale and they were giving everyone like emotional send-off. But there was some really like intense bits of like genuine emotion, like the pastry chef sort of meeting his father and impressing him with the food. That was really, really good. A lot of the scenes between like Carme and Richard. Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis turning up again as Carme's mum, and you know, her spending some nice time with her daughter and her granddaughter, and also reconciling with Carme a bit. It did really feel like when they wrapped things up or gave characters an emotional payoff, it really did work really well. And yeah, had some really nice moments.
Yeah, no, I appreciated that, if anything, they actually allowed Carmi to actually take, maybe not quite a fully back seat, but to step back a little bit and allow Sydney to sort of come forward and take over, because that is what's meant to actually be happening in The Bear. And it did feel like it was actually properly reflected in the show a bit. She, I think, had a lot more scenes facing actual responsibility. There was a lot of stuff with her and Carmi and the balance in their relationship kind of shifting as he struggles to perhaps step back and let go. They have some awkward moments talking over each other, and I thought that stuff was all quite nicely handled. I think that character played by Io Edebri has always been quietly one of the best bits of the show, and it's nice to see her getting a lot of good material in this final season.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the central drama of this final season is how will Sydney cope taking over? Can she like step into Carme's shoes? Can she run the show? I mean, obviously, yeah, it takes place over one sort of like night of service in the restaurants, and it's like the restaurant's fully booked. They're short on staff. They're short on supplies. It's raining really heavily. There's like problems with the building. They've sort of thrown like a lot of like setting environmental obstacles at the characters, and it's basically like, can Sydney steer the ship through these like treacherous waters? Is the kind of central drama. And I say like Carmi's taking a step back again. I especially felt that like his character had reached sort of resolution at the end of season 4, which is when he says like, I don't want to run a restaurant anymore. I want to find out what I'm like, you know, when I'm not cooking. And the show didn't spend lots of time on Carme like experiencing new things in life or trying to find himself. That's like sort of beyond the scope of this story, which I thought again was quite good. They could easily done a season, you know, more like season 4, just with Sydney running the Bear, and each week Carme tries a different profession or something like that. But they didn't do that. They just left it with basically, yeah, the torch is passed and Carme leaves, yeah. And there's some very intense emotional moments. It's just like when they have to change their sort of signature dish at the end from Carme's one to one of Sydney's, and he's like, you know, this is better than anything I ever made, and things like that. That's a really good like, yeah, emotional moment of like symbolic and literal passing of the torch.
Yeah, and I think, as I sort of said earlier, it's good that they've decided to close off the show in this way, where they do bring it back to the restaurant and the food and then just stop it, rather than, as you say, turning it into this wider exploration of Carmi going out into the world. I think it makes it probably a better work overall.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also enjoyed Vichy. I've always enjoyed Vichy, to be fair. In some ways, Vichy had his big moment of like explosive character growth in the episode in season 2, where he famously went to work in a lovely restaurant and discovered the joy of customer service, which is still one of the best TV episodes of the last few years. And in some ways, his journey over the subsequent 3.5 seasons has basically just been him trying to sustain and slightly further that character growth, which is one of those things that doesn't sound that exciting, but Yvonne Moss-Bachrach somehow just makes it incredibly entertaining. It's just Vichy's angry struggle to be a better man is just weirdly compelling.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal actor, and this is a really, really great character, an absolute tour de force. Yeah, Richie's sort of arc is some of the most satisfying and best done in this show. And then I like in this how, his job is to cancel bookings because they're overbooked, and he just refuses to do it and is suckered in by everyone's stories about how special this night's going to be, and then insists they do absolutely everything to make sure that everyone has a great night at the Bear, despite all the additional pressure it puts on people. And yeah, but it's really sweet and nice, I thought.
Yeah, and it's kind of in a weird way in character with, Vichy pre-season 2 being just incredibly stroppy and uncooperative. But here he's being stroppy and uncooperative in a positive way to try and make people's lives better. It fully works with the way the character is developed, and it's just really nice. And yeah, and Vichy actually gets the final shot of the whole show, which...
Yeah.
Rather than Kami, even though he's arguably the one the show is named after. And it's nice, it's maybe a reflection, but he's had in some ways, one of the most memorable journeys.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I like how the show begins with Kame coming back and ends with Richie leaving. Well, he's leaving for a conference, but still, I think there's definitely, that was deliberate in this sense. Yeah, it begins with an arrival, ends with a departure. So yeah, I thought that worked really well and was very emotionally satisfying. Yeah, Richie's probably got the most distinctive journey across the whole thing, but it did pay off really, really well.
Well, I think, the central triumvirs of, Kami, Vichy and Sydney are probably the sort of core of the show, and everyone else just gets a nice little cute payoff here and there. They do actually cover everybody. But to be fair, they've got an hour-long epilogue episode at the end. Again, some might feel it self-indulgent, but it does mean they do at least get round everybody. Everybody gets at least a scene or a couple of scenes to, point you towards where they're going next. And for the most part, it's very satisfying and fulfilling. It did at some point remind me of watching various Aaron Sorkin shows, which I guess are quite similar, where you have a bunch of, awesome characters working competently whilst telling each other how awesome they are and occasionally arguing. It's quite Sorkin-esque in at least that way, although not in many other ways.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And also, to borrow a point you previously made, this series really reminded me of when we talked about the second season of Fleabag, or what you talked about the final season of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is there isn't this sense of building to the biggest drama or the biggest conflict is in the final season, the final battle or whatever, the last assault on the stronghold or whatever. There's more of a sense of they've reached their emotional peak, and the characters have been through the worst and they've tackled their biggest issues, and this is kind of more of I don't want to say downswing, but more a kind of coming in for a landing, maybe, which is a satisfying ending to any journey, especially a plane journey. But there's this sense of they're getting towards the end, and the way it's structured is they're getting people who've gone through the worst into this, tiding away the last of their drama into this happy position, rather than a lot of shows that save their biggest battle right to the end.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of effort to give them this final sort of massive hurdle to clear, because obviously, they have this final epic day of service they have to get through in the first 7 episodes, which I think is kind of portrayed as this single massive showdown they have to go through. But unavoidably, the show has always been very character orientated, and the characters have all finished their journeys. So it does mean this final season has a kind of unavoidable feeling of epilogue.
Yeah, which is, but it kind of works quite well. Again, sort of making it really tight and focused on this basically one day meant it had sense of pacing and stuff, which is, even though when a lot of the character stuff had been resolved. And they did also cut down on the celebrity cameos to focus in on the core characters, which I thought was an appropriate decision for the ending. There was a nice bit in almost the final few shots when at Richie's daughter's birthday party, when sort of Bob Odenkirk and Claire was there in the background, but there wasn't a lot of celebrities turning up or additional characters thrown in for this final season. Jamie Lee Curtis coming back as the mum was nice to resolve sort of that plot line. And I like how Will Poulter, the only sort of famous person who was in every episode this time, this kind of became a Bear regular, and he's a good actor and a good addition to the core Bear squad.
Yeah, no, I liked his dynamic with Marcus that they kind of built up over the last couple of years.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun, and a little bit of genuine drama, and that almost descended into arguing before they inevitably maturely and responsibly made up.
Yeah, but that was good, and to see, actually, one of the few things I hadn't done before is the one thing that distresses unflappable Marcus, I guess, was his dad coming to the restaurant. Again, that was some nice drama. Yeah, and even there's some more nice little satisfying bits, I like how, they resolve the plot line with kind of the beef window, and them franchising that out with Computer, and Computer's niece, there's a young woman version of Computer, which is another interesting weird character they threw in. And I also like that on the phone to Albert, character from the previous season, played by Rob Reiner, who obviously was tragically murdered in between seasons. So it was nice that they kept the character alive by having him being spoken to on the phone but not seen or heard. But I just really liked that as a little touch. They could have just ignored that character entirely, but it was nice that they acknowledged that Rob Reiner is still part of the Bear universe, even though he's not part of this universe.
Yeah, I liked that they maybe leaned in a bit more into comedy at times. There's a few more moments, especially towards the start of the season, of outright silliness and slapstick, a lot of pipes exploding and people falling through the ceiling. And there's a bit where at the very end of one of the episodes the pipes massively explode in the Bear whilst the facts are standing underneath it, and then you could just hear them desperately screaming over the top of the credits, which was quite funny.
That was really funny. I just like how he says over and over, it goes like, Neil, are you okay? No. Neil, are you okay? No. And it just goes on for for about 30 seconds. That was really, really funny.
Yeah, is the Bear a comedy, and should it be nominated in the comedy category in awards, is one of these debates that has, I know, run and run throughout its time, but I did think there were some good funny moments in this final season.
Just as we got around to watching the final season of The Bear, the Emmys have been announced, and the fourth season of The Bear has been nominated for a lot of comedy Emmys again, so I think the debate is live once again.
I mean, I think clearly that's the category they're entering it into. Maybe just because it's about half an hour long. Who knows?
Yeah, I liked how they ended it. And, I think overall, it's got a few weaker moments, but I would generally say one of the best shows on TV of the last 5-10 years overall. It is a phenomenal piece of drama. It feels like a modern epic, even though, mainly focused on the kitchen, but so much like how it begins with this whole conflict between the working class blue collar people and this Heston Blumenthal crazy experimental dining, and
as we'd all want, the experimental dining wins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but there's a lot of character growth, and they all come together, and there's a lot of interesting detours and fascinating bits along the way, and a whole universe of Bear lore, including like the French Laundry, the place they all worked before, and the other restaurants and things like that. And I don't know, I feel it is like an epic of the modern age, so I feel the creators can be very, very pleased with what they've done here, because overall it is really good.
Yeah, no, it's always ranked highly on the old top 10s. It'll probably rank somewhere towards the top of this year's one. I haven't actually sat down to work anything out yet, but I feel it's got a good chance. It's the sort of emotional catharsis-heavy character epic I always like. It's very well done, it's very stylish, it's got a lot of great actors in it. As Alice has said, it's probably one of the best shows of the decade so far.
Finally, this episode, we will be discussing The Sheep Detectives. Hugh Jackman stars as a shepherd who reads murder mysteries to his sheep at night. When he is murdered, his sheep take on the task of solving the crime. I can't believe I made it through that with a straight face. We have seen this film, which is now available on Amazon Prime. Nick, what did you think of it?
I thought this was fun enough, cosy, slightly unambitious viewing. I enjoyed the slightly kooky premise. I laughed at some of the sheep jokes because I just enjoy a good livestock joke. They're just so silly looking and weird, and livestock in situations just always makes me laugh. It's fun seeing some of the fairly well-known actors they've got to pop up. Hugh Jackman's clearly having a fun time here. And it's fun, it's nice. I always felt like it could have been better, I don't know. There was quite a lot of dialogue or plot stuff which just felt a bit dead straight, a bit obvious. But it's a fun premise and it's well enough executed. I didn't hate watching it. It never quite transcended and became particularly great for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of sums it up really in its entirety. The premise kind of tells you everything you need to know about this film. It's in that it's really quite silly and not supposed to be taken that seriously. It's kind of at its best when there's the sheep are just clowning around, just being silly really. There's a very funny sequence when a sheep gets loose during the reading of the will and just kind of running around the house, absolutely wreaking havoc, and then sort of slamming full on into a window and doing a cartoon style, sliding down the window with his sort of face pressed against the glass. So it's funniest when it's kind of daft with the idea of sheep solving murders because they've heard some detective stories. That's kind of where it's at its best.
Yeah, the sheep stuff is the unique part of this film, and a lot of the fun stuff is the sheep comedy, sheep messing around. The few times when it gets into the mythology of the sheep or the rules of their society, or the fact that they have this ability to make themselves forget things if they want to, which is one of those, I don't know if this has any real basis in the psychology and neurology of sheep, but it seems like the sort of thing that a sheep might be able to do. It rings true in a weird way, and it's quite entertainingly used here.
Well, they're famously not very bright, which actually they do address in the show. They just follow each other for no reason, and he's addressing the show, which is at one point one of the smart sheeps actually says do you know what humans call other humans who just do what they're told without thinking about it? Sheep. So That's one of the more sort of actual moments of cutting drama.
Yeah, it occasionally veers into a bit of genuine drama or even occasionally genuine pathos, but a lot of the time it just has this sort of light, wholesome silliness going on. The human actors are alright as well, although they're fairly straightforward archetypal characters, and a lot of the best stuff is reserved for the sheep. But the policeman, played by Cousin Greg from Succession, is a fun part.
Yeah, they got some good, a few good people in. Nicholas Braun as the policeman, who's a bit of an idiot, is quite funny. Emma Thompson turning up for some reason.
Sure, I think it's a bit traditional that you get at least a couple of national treasures into these sort of films if you can.
Yeah, Molly Gordon from The Bear, actually, didn't make it really into the final season.
Yeah, I did spend a lot of the final season of The Bear thinking, not much Claire in this. And then she turned up for ages in Sheep Detectives. Maybe she was just busy doing sheep.
Yeah, or being the Hugh Jackman character's daughter. Yeah, and then obviously the cast they have for the sheep is pretty impressive. I guess they got a lot of famous people in because they only have to do like a few minutes in the sound booth. But yeah, Bryan Cranston, Bella Ramsey, Rhys Darby, Chris O'Dowd, Brett Goldstein playing two sheep.
Yeah. If you've seen the film, it will not be a surprise which sheep Brett Goldstein is playing.
Yeah, exactly. And also the two sheep he's playing are like Reggie and I can't remember the other one now. But they've got the same names as the Cray twins, and he's playing both of them. So obviously a reference to that film Legends, in which Tom Hardy was both of the Cray twins. I especially enjoyed that as I don't know why there's a joke. There's a sort of meta joke about the film Legend around Brett Goldstein's character. But yeah, Patrick Stewart's a sheep.
Obviously.
Why not? Yeah, I think there were some others. Yeah, it's a good cast and stuff. The whole thing's kind of pitched at a kind of like makes you chuckle, go like, oh, there's Bryan Cranston playing a moody sheep. There's Chris O'Dowd playing a silly sheep.
Yeah, it's the sort of film you could probably stick on the afternoon on Christmas Day or something, and everyone would just go, yeah, sheep. It would be fine, probably. Everyone would be broadly unoffended by it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's something interesting sort of about where it's set in this kind of idealised Cotswold-y English village type thing, but also seems to be bizarrely international. There's Australians, there's Americans. The post woman who comes by is bizarrely dressed like a American post person, not a British one. Things like that. I don't know if that's because copyright and Royal Mail, but it is a sort of bizarre grab bag of different kind of cultural references in this sort of strange international nowhere. What's this Anglophone nowhere village that they live in?
I didn't spot the postman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does feel like a village that doesn't exist and possibly never existed.
Yeah.
Except possibly in these sort of stories where it just needs to be a setting for a murder mystery.
Yeah, I suppose, like, in the book, because it's based on a book that was quite a bit of a success, like, characters don't have accents or whatever that comes through, but in this they've got a sort of selection of things. I did especially enjoy in the village how every business has a big neon sign on it saying what it is, so you kind of know what the location is, almost like a video game, like, you know, that's the police station because it says police station and big neon signs on it, and the butcher has a big sign saying butcher. Then at one point,
also his name is Mr. Ham, isn't it?
Yeah, as well, and it's what's his name from Game of Thrones. Didn't recognise him with hair. And then at one point when they're walking along, they walk past a business that says something like Jenny's neon signs, and underneath it says discounts for local businesses, and that explains why everyone's got a neon sign. So that little joke was quite funny. It's full
I like that. I like that level of world building.
Yeah. It's full of little things that make you smile. This was a nice thing to watch on a Friday night after a long week of work and a bit depleted after not sleeping so well in the heat. So well pitched, Amazon.
Yeah. No, definitely, possibly a bit unchallenging. But I didn't guess the end of the murder mystery. I guess at the end of the day, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't spoil the end of the murder mystery on this podcast. There's probably not really any point. I guessed some aspects of where it was going, but it was well misdirected enough I didn't guess the entire thing.
No, it was the same as well. And also I felt genuinely invested in the murder mystery. There's definitely sometimes when I've watched, especially comedies, when like the genre that they're spoofing or whatever they're doing is just a veneer for jokes, basically, and you don't really care about the plot. Like the one that comes to mind is like Austin Powers. Like no one really cares about whether Dr. Evil takes over the world or lasers the Earth from space or whatever. I don't even remember what his plan is, right? The whole thing is just a structure for the next joke. Yeah, and the first Austin Powers is generally quite funny. But this is not just a kind of, well, it's just a vehicle for silly jokes about sheep. I was invested enough in like, I kind of do want to know who did this and like why and what like the intricacies of it are. So it's more than just like, here's a vague premise just for some jokes about sheep trying to act like people.
Well, yeah, and the good thing about the fact that the sheep stuff works is that the sheep are the ones who are, invested in it and are, attached to their beloved beloved shepherd father figure. So it does at least encourage you to actually care. Plus Hugh Jackman, he's very charismatic in his, by necessity, slightly short-lived role as the shepherd.
Yeah. But it's well cast. And yeah, he just continues his trajectory towards lovable Australian national treasure Hugh Jackman, when he's clearly doesn't take himself too seriously even appear in a film like this. He's done a few cameos and things over the years already, sort of sending himself up or whatever, such as in the Night at the Museum 3 when he cameos briefly as an actor playing King Arthur. Yeah, I know he's clearly got a sense of humour about himself and doesn't have this whole I'm a big deal, I was Wolverine sort of thing, and I quite like his sort of public persona of that. He's willing to do silly films and subvert his tough man image.
I mean, based on what I have seen of Hugh Jackman, his tough man image seems to basically be entirely confined to the Wolverine films. He seems to be mostly just a nice enough guy having a nice time the rest of the time.
Yeah.
To be fair, I'm not a cinephile, as we have unravelled over the 270 episodes of this podcast. He may well have done more intense parts that I'm just not aware of, but certainly when he's not on screen, he always just seems like a fairly pleasant, chill dude.
Yeah, and actually I just remembered the Denis Villeneuve one of his first English language ones, the one after Enemy. Is it Prisoners? Hugh Jackman is really good in that and really dark and quite disturbing.
Okay.
Yeah, so actually that just popped into my head. I haven't thought that film in years. I mean, it's a great film because it's Denis Villeneuve and you can see it's a murder mystery cop drama thing. But yeah, I just remembered he's in that and he's really, really good as a grieving father who's sort of driven insane by his vendetta against a local mentally disabled person that he thinks committed the murder. He does have a range and is a very talented actor and stuff. But you're right that his main register is either Wolverine or this sort of thing's almost like subverting Wolverine, but he has that Prisoners just jumped to mind as an instance of him really showing off the acting chops and doing dark and tortured, which I suppose is related to the Wolverine character as well.
Yes, but nowadays we're very much in the modern outside Wolverine Hugh Jackman territory where he's just having a laugh.
Yeah. He's shown his chops off, he's done his big blockbusters, he's done his amazing performances.
And to be fair, even in his last Wolverine film, he was mostly just having a laugh.
Yeah, that's also a good point, yeah.
I think you may feel that he kind of put serious Wolverine in the ground in Logan.
Yeah, no, I think so, yeah. And yeah, they're a very fitting end to that character. And he got an Oscar nomination for it. Yeah, justly deserved. But yeah, as you say, this is fun. It's a good Christmas Day movie. It's probably not going to be on the best of the year, but I enjoyed it.
Yes, as you may better tell from the fact we've briefly embarked on a Hugh Jackman retrospective, perhaps not a huge, vast amount to say about it, but it is a fun enough, cosy crime movie with an added weird, cheap twist.
Yeah.
If you want something fun and inoffensive to watch with the family, you could do worse.
Yeah. Go watch Prisoners if you really want to see something dark and disturbing and Denis Villeneuve. Then you can watch this and this is a nice kind of palate cleanser afterwards.
Yeah, so you can watch your pleasant chic movie once you've earned it. Okay, and that was Moderate Fantasy Violence. Thank you very much for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, then why not go to moderatefantasyviolence.com and enjoy all our previous podcasts, including reviews of, I think, every season of The Bear we have covered, plus many, many, many other things, and essays and all sorts. And if you enjoyed that, then why not leave us a nice 5-star review? Thank you.
And after you've done that, you can follow us on Facebook by searching for Moderate Fantasy Violence, or follow us on Blue Sky, where we're at MFV Podcast. And after you're done following the podcast, you can follow me by searching for Alistair Ball on TikTok, Instagram, or Blue Sky. You can also find more of my writing at redtrainblog.com. You can also find my theatre reviews at everythingtheatre.com, and you can sign up to my newsletter via any of the above-mentioned social media channels.
And once you've followed the podcast and Alistair, if you want, you can also follow me. I am nickbryan.com on Blue Sky, nickbryan.com on the internet, and nickbryan.com with the word dot on Instagram, where I mostly talk about my self-published comics and occasionally the TV I have watched. And what will I be watching for the next podcast episode? Well, we'll be back in 2 weeks when we'll be discussing the new Christopher Nolan epic, The Odyssey, and we'll be finally watching the popular spooky comedy drama series, Widow's Bay. See you in 2 weeks for that. Bye-bye.
Bye.